Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to introduce my guest, Sonya Spaziani, who is also Mustang Meg, and you might know her best as Mustang Meg on Facebook. And I am excited to talk to her today about her experiences documenting and following and photographing wild horses and educating all of us about why we need to preserve them. So, thank you for being here today, Sonya.
Great to be here. Like I was saying, I have always been a fan of yours for so long, and you're an inspiration. So thank you for the opportunity for this interview.
Thank you. And so you have been following wild horses since 1994, is that correct?
I've been going out there since 1994 with my husband, just camping soon after we were married. And this is long before I even realized we had horses here in Oregon. And we were just driving down this rutted road, and right in front of us, a herd of Mustangs of every color, size, and shape went busting over the road. And then I needed to know everything I can about them. That's where it started. But it wasn't until 2004, following the American Wild Horse campaign, that I started noticing that there are some problems. And by 2008, 2009, I started my Mustang Meg page. And here we are today. And well, I started photo documenting our Steens Mustangs here in Southeast Oregon, 2011. So
Okay.
we started applying names and kind of learning about them over the years.
And so the horses had they been documented at all, like with names and birth and all that sort of stuff before you started, or were you pretty much the person who started that?
It was several of us. They weren't documented prior. Well, they weren't uh, name ID documented. We started learning from each other, a group of us, and and it became clear that we were all kind of going out there different times of the year and kind of filling each other in through chat, for instance, and then decided, well, we just need to photo document and to track some of these horses. And out on Steens, we've been lucky because there was a span of a decade about that, that there really wasn't a lot going out there as far as removals. So we really got to follow generations and generations of Mustangs. And I think we started about 2012, 2013, started up our pages. We have several South Steens pages, and mine that I happen to be part of is South Steens Wild Horses.
Okay.
And then there's a couple others that really help. And we go between all these pages, and we talk to each other on one unified chat called the Oregon Mustang or Oregon Mustang Group, or OMG. So we don't double name horses, and we kind of stay on the same page, and we name apply range names that are in themes so that it can help us all remember who belongs to who, as you know, as one generation to the next moves on.
That's wonderful. I mean, I've seen it in other herds that as well, that it really helps to have people naming and recognizing the horses, because then you really bring the horses to life. It's not just this pinto over there. It's, this horse that you've known, and his family, his background, and people get really engaged when they get to know a horse.
Exactly.
In the Steens, I know they are having this 10-year plan where the BLM has a 10-year plan for removals. And what year is it on in the Steens now?
Well,
They've
I
done,
they
they've done
just
a
started
couple removals,
here.
haven't they?
Yes, yes. Well, they started with bait trap gathers about 2016, and they contacted our group, and we worked together in a big chat about the horses, and our recommendations of which horses should remain, because they were taking from I think weanlings on to a certain age. And so we all worked together, and it went really well. And they, each time they took out about 100 horses by bait trap, and there wasn't a lot of trauma, it seemed, back then. And it seemed really workable. And I really liked that they contacted us and worked with the people, and that made a huge difference. And so we were able to back and help, what they were doing. It was a coordinated effort, and I really appreciated that. So it was 2016, 17, 2019. And then 2020, they had a small aerial to remove horses from private property, and that extended into the HMA. And they just had one in 2022, a large gather of about 753 horses. And then I thought we were done with that. And then a couple of months ago, learned that there's another one there at the Steens coming up this August. So what they're trying to do is reduce it down to AML, and then try and maintain through contraception after that.
So
that's
what's
of
the
it.
low,
And
what's the low AML for this team?
134. Yeah.
So that's their goal right now, is to get down to low AML.
That's their goal. And I think this is part of, I'm sure you've noticed there's a step up in removals, and that goes along with the path forward that was put in place. So they're trying to bring a lot of these HMAs down to AML, and then treat through various fertility control methods after that, is what I'm understanding.
Well, hopefully it'll be just PZP and not any other method of sterilization.
Well, that's the problem. And I need to have more research done on this. But what I researched a few years ago is that Gonacon is a chemical sterilization, permanent sterilization agent, and it affects mares and stallions, believe it or not. They could just go dart stallions, even mares, and it's a permanent sterilization technique. And that would be devastating to the wild horses. With something like PCP, as you know, it's a contraceptive, and if the books are kept right, then it's a positive thing, because it allows mares to take breaks from foaling, but it doesn't affect the genetics, and allows all mares and stallions to express their genetics there on the range. But Gonacon, it'll affect. From what I've read, it'll affect behavior. It'll basically, it's like gelding a stallion. It changes their hormones, mares too. And we have test geldings on Steens from 2009. We had about 15, and it didn't do anything for the population control, but it's certainly apparent that they're geldings. They just have a different behavior. It's like a different language, and their biggest interest is remaining in a localized area, their favorite area, grazing and sleeping, and that's not an American Mustang to me.
No. So at 135, that is below what's needed for genetic viability for that herd.
That's adult mature horses, I think, is what Dr. Gus Cothran and Kirkpatrick have said, that they need adults at that level.
Right. So. Well, so you did have a period of time where you were working with the BLM, and it was going well.
Yes, it was going very well. And I'm seeing all these groups around the different West states. And I think that would be an ideal situation to be able to communicate with their BLM and work together, because it seems to me that the photographers that head out to these areas really know the horses, really know the region and everything that goes along with it. And I think communication is key, and it would certainly soften the how the public sees the BLM, which these days it seems like they do need some help in that aspect, and being able to corroborate and work together, I think, would be a plus. And I see the terrific potential there.
And so have you, reached out to them about this upcoming uh, gather?
Not at this point. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it that they're going after the Steens again. It kind of was a surprise, though, not knowing what the path forward is trying to do and bring all these HMAs down to a starting point of AML and then try to maintain them. So I haven't yet. And there's some changes going on, I think, in our office. So at some point, I would like to stop over there and have a conversation with them again.
Yeah, and I hope that they are willing to work with you and get input on which horses to remove, because it's so important. If with that small a herd left, the genetics are very important. So you really would want them to take horses that have made more of a genetic contribution and keep the ones that haven't.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And just, like I said, being able to work with our group, we're kind of representing the public as well, and we get feedback from the public, and we're like a conduit to the BLM. And I'm not one for sides. I like to kind of remain a bit in the middle and neutral and work with the ranchers, work with the BLM, and of course our citizens, and try and find a common ground that we can all work together. So we'll get there again. We will.
Yeah, I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
What's a typical day for you when you go out with the horses? Although every day is different, but
It is, and I that's why I love it. It's every trip is vastly different. It has different feel, a different sense. But a typical day, if we're out in colder weather, then well, we've camped in cold weather also, but we like to stay in a little cabin and have a nice warm meal, and then review on our laptops, the day's events and everything. But typically we do like to camp out and have a dinner on the tailgate, and it starts early, and we just we'll hike out, we'll try and scout for them, and then set the rest of the day, and which hike to which water hole, and connecting. Sometimes we'll take a truck to one end and then a second truck to the other, and then hike clear across the situation. But it's basically morning when we get up till dark, and we return sometimes with headlamps, and we're starving and we're hungry, and then sit down with at the campfire or whatever, and just have a great meal and just talk about the day's events. It's just wonderful.
and so do you find that the horses go more often in the morning, in the evening to the water holes, or does it vary a lot?
It can vary, but typically we'll see a lot of early morning or evening. We have a little campsite. It's wonderful to just, it's like you have your brain trained, but you're in the bedroll, and you'll hear certain sounds that are the best alarm anywhere, like the hoof falls or little snorts, and they're going to the water, and it's great. It is just great. But yeah, yeah, every trip is different, and it's never ever the same, whether it's weather or what horses we see, or patterns or behaviors, different times of year. There's definitely different behaviors. Just recently we were talking with some people about late spring to early summer is when a lot of the bands tend to congregate into herds, and those herds travel together, and that's when it seems a lot of changes happen on the range, and it's a very exciting time of year. But changes happen all year round, but especially during, as you know, during those times with foaling and breeding season and whatnot.
What's one of your favorite encounters that you can remember?
Uh, Probably the Voodoo Band. We don't see them very often. They're the all black band on Steens. And it's funny, but I happened to see them, come across them in the month of October, and I think that's mostly because of the water holes. They start drying up, and so the horses start moving in different regions on the range. But the Voodoo Band, it seems like every time I come across him, then some weird situation happens. Oh, let's see. There's one time we just happened to come across the Voodoo Band, all 5 or 6 of them, all black horses, and of course Voodoo himself, and it was a very blue sky, warm day. I think I just saw a tiny little itty bitty cloud in the sky, and that was it. We left his region after photographing him and the band, and about an hour later, we went into another region, and all of a sudden, it was the coldest I've ever felt in my life. We had blue lips. We had shards of ice. Well, I had to put on my sunglasses because those shards of ice were blowing into my face, hurting my eyes. And we actually, I've never experienced this before, but we had thunder snow. We have the Steens Highlands in the background, and there were shards of ice, and you can hear the thunder rumbling against the echo of the mountain. It was bizarre. And then one other time, well, there were other stories about voodoo, but one other time, real quick, we were hiking into his region because he likes a particular region. And I remember walking through about a couple of acres, an acre, a couple acres of sagebrush. The rocks were those flat volcanic rocks that you can teeter on them and sometimes lose your footing or whatever. But we were walking through this area, and there were beautiful butterflies, just beautiful. They, like, I remember, mostly yellow. And we went out into his region. We didn't see, well, we think we saw voodoo. We saw a black stallion that came out of the edge of the juniper forest and then ran back in. Alice and I went jetting up a rimrock so that we can see up and over the juniper and see which trajectory he went to try and find him. We didn't find him. We just heard him whinny, and he was gone. And then we went walking back a few miles back to the truck, and we were passing back along this region with the teetering rocks, and and I kid you not, but that area where there were butterflies, there were the tiniest little gossamer looking moths. They turned, I mean, I'm not saying they turned to moths, but that whole area had the cutest little moths instead of those yellow butterflies. And, I mean, sometimes I just think I just didn't have enough water that day, just hiking out in the desert. It could very well be, but those are just some of the experiences of going after the Voodoo Band.
Well, and
Very
you have quite a connection to the land, not just to the horses. So, and that's something that a lot of people never get the experience of.
Well, and that's one of the things that I love about what we do is, like you and I and the other photographers, is being able to do this and share with them through a format that's very easy to share the different, the videos, the photos. But that's the neatest thing, is being able to share with people that are not able to get out there. And the ones that touch me the most is those that might have a disability, that dream about horses, and they just want to be out there. And I love being able to find these moments and sharing with them, or the little kids, which I really enjoy on my page, the children reading about the Mustangs. And so I really enjoy being able to come back and bring back these events, kind of like just an ability to perhaps roam a little wild with me or you or a photographer, so they can actually see and enjoy what we have out there, the wild horses and the wild burros.
Well, it sounds like voodoo is rather elusive, but I know that in the Steens there are bands that are easier to get close to, but I think it's important to let people know that it's important not to get too close to the horses.
Absolutely.
Some respect.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And what I do with videos and photos, I really, like I know you do too, is to get the natural behaviors and what they do naturally. Um, and and that's achievable by becoming part of their environment and having a good long lens, and then just watching and observing, and being able to get those photographs of how they are naturally and bring those to viewers.
Yes. And yeah, and I think when you're able to step back and just watch, um, there's more of an opportunity for a connection than if you're chasing them or trying to get too close or bothering them or anything like that.
It's real interesting on the Steens. We have certain regions. We have what we call the Hollywood region, where the horses are so accustomed to people, photographers, and we'll have yearlings that have seen people. Often they want to get closer because they're very curious, and we have to shoo them off. And there are some stallions that have seen us for over 10 years that do the same thing. They're really curious, so we have to shoo them off. But then I love the ones in the back country or the outback of the Steens, where if you see a band about a half mile away and there's antelope between you and them, and the antelope will respond, and then they respond, and then all that work trying to get closer to that wild band, there all you see is just a cloud of dust where they so it varies from the horses you have to shoo off. You don't want them to get close. You don't want them to get used to being close to people, because it sets up a dangerous situation for people who don't know horses
Right.
or horse behavior, and they allow them to get around them, and then they get caught between a mare and a stallion, or two fighting stallions, or who knows. There's so many bad situations that can come up, and so we don't want them to get used to being close to people. And so best thing that's worked for me is I carry a monopod, and I just hold it over my head, and that weirds the horses out, and they give me a good 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 space.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, but it's those wildies out there in the hills that they see you from a mile away, and they're already running. And
Right.
then just trying to figure out a way, using really airflow and cover, and trying to get as close as possible so our 600 millimeter lenses can actually, get a view of one of those wild ones.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And have you found that video has become more and more important in sharing experiences with the horses recently?
Yes, yes, and just the ease of video these days and reels, and it helps to share behaviors, which I really like. That was my study at Oregon State University, is psychology and behavior, and specifically my interest in behavior of animals,
Hmm.
and being able to capture that certain behaviors like clacking, for instance, is great for the viewers, and being able to explain it to viewers what's going on and why. I really do like the video piece of it.
Yeah, and I think it's engaging for people. People get more interested, and I'm a still photographer, and I've knuckled under and started doing reels because I realized that people really get engaged with those.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. But I do love photography. I'll always love photography, just because you can really look into a moment or a situation and see details of an animal or a situation. So photography will always be a big love, but the video aspect is wonderful as well.
So, I mean, really, your wish would be to keep these horses on their home range, not remove them, and use birth control if the numbers need to be controlled.
Exactly. Exactly. And then if it's needed, maybe some bait trap gathers, and adoptions, I think is okay if it's needed, but on a much smaller scale. But definitely birth control is the way to go. It's been proven over and over again in field studies with Kirkpatrick and team, and I I know you guys do that also out there, and it helps to keep the numbers in check.
I,
But that
I,
would be my wish.
I haven't been doing any darting, but yes, in some herds they have, and then of course in McCullough Peaks recently, even though the numbers had been kept small, they went ahead and removed horses anyway.
Yeah, I've been hearing about that.
So it's frustrating.
It is. It is. I take it back to the path forward. What they're trying to do is, they're really just going after all the different herds and bringing them down to AML, and we're seeing that kind of backlash, and where they're going to put all these horses when they're at capacity at long-term holding. It's mind-boggling what they're trying to do when there's so many good solutions.
Right. And it's absolutely heartbreaking when horses that you know and have loved for a long time have been removed.
Absolutely. I mean, I they're not my horses, but they're all of our horses. All these horses that we follow, and quite honestly, I feel with the Steens gather, after having followed some of these horses, these families, and these bonded stallions and mares that have been together for a dozen years. I can't help it. Just my heart really breaks for the viewers, because it's like going into their backyard or pasture and removing, something that they love. Because we get to know these animals like they're our own. And it's hard for me, and I know for you, and then all the viewers that have been following for years.
Right. Absolutely.
It's not easy.
Um, as far as getting the word out, I mean, I think, photos are so powerful and
Yeah.
for advocacy, because people can see that the horses aren't starving to death. They're not dying of thirst. They're suited for the lands that they are on. And so
Absolutely.
I think that what you do is so very, very important, because it brings home that these horses need to stay there, and that they're doing just fine out there. They don't need to be saved. They don't need to be removed and put in a holding facility.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's remarkable viewing photographs of all the different photographers around the 10 West states, and all times of the year, and just seeing how all the Mustangs are doing out there, all year round. It's very enlightening. And I for that reason, I put together a page called Wild Horses, where photographers from all over can submit their photographs, and it just helps to show the horses from around. Like I do Steens and I do Oregon herds, but on Wild Horses, people can see the Mustangs from all over the West states. And it is it shows just how well they do on their own, and how healthy they are, most all times of the year. They're made for this environment.
Have you noticed the Oregon horses being different from other herds in certain ways?
um you know well, Oregon, the way they manage here in Oregon, they tend to manage for the type. Like, we have the Steens, which tends to be higher in percentage for pintos.
Mm.
Then we have Warm Springs, which we tend to have more Appaloosa. We've got Kygers that have they're geologically isolated. So we have more of the Kyger horses. Well, not more, but they are the Kygers in the Kyger region. Um, and then we have Stinking Water that has a lot of Rowans. So they tend to be managed for color. They'll return horses that represent that, for instance. Um, but I do see subtle differences when I look at different regions, that the horses have a certain look. Like, I think for Wyoming, there's a more Iberian, um, just the build, the conformation is just beautiful. That Wyoming horses are just stunning, like the McCullough Peaks. But yeah, so there's regional differences, I would say.
Yeah. And lots of color in Oregon, clearly.
Lots of color, yes. Pristines, the pintos, yes. For
And
sure.
smaller herds, usually, too. Definitely the herds are smaller in size.
Mhm.
Manage for less horses. Manage for less.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It seems that they stay up on that. Definitely.
Right. So, well, anything else you can think of?
Uh, no, I mean, I could talk horses all day,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but I love the community and being able to have the ease of being able to see through social media all the different herds of the different states and the representatives of those states, such as you, or Ginger Catherine's with the Priors, and I do hope, when you were talking about wishes, I do hope that there's more of an effort between BLM and citizen photographer groups that follow heavily specific areas, and be able to communicate more and have a little bit more of a say in their management through the state's BLM office.
Right, right. That is so key. And it's wonderful that you have had good luck with it in the past. And I hope that that continues. Um, Something that's very alarming is the budget for 2025. The BLM budget now includes 15 million for sterilization. So I think it's going to be a very rough year and a very important year for people to speak out about this.
It's going to be an uphill battle, but one step at a time, and we'll get there. If we all continue to work together. But yeah, we can't let the dust settle. We got to keep protecting these horses.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and for continuing to share your photographs, your experiences with people. It's so important.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing yours. I love following what you do. You're amazing.
Thank you.